Okay, thank you. Good morning. My name is Chris Cutts. I'm Director of the Centre for Pharmacy for Postgraduate Education. I know quite a few faces in the audience, which is really nice. I guess some people might wonder who CPPA are. So we're the health education funded education body for pharmacy across England. We have a national network of tutors and a regional structure, but we're funded through the University of Manchester to deliver ongoing education, CPD, continuing education, professional development for pharmacists and pharmacy technicians, no matter what sector. So community pharmacy, hospital pharmacy, primary care, general practice based. And so we've been asked to support this pilot, and over the next 10 minutes or so, or 20 minutes or so, I will describe to you the work that we've got to at the moment. At the moment, this has kind of dominated my summer, and I do feel, I describe myself often as Wallace and Gromit, and you know the train and the railway tracks. Conway House, I'm on the dog, laying down the tracks as we're going through this. This is an iterative process, and what I'm going to talk about the development process for these individuals is where we are today, and clearly there's a bit more timeline to go. Hindsight is going to be a wonderful thing when we get there. But at the moment, we're dealing with about 250 people somewhere in the country with some training, from some background, with some experiences, who need a lot of help. So as you can imagine, the model we're developing, we're trying to create a kind of generic view, which then we can piece together as we know more as the pilots come around. Now clearly, if these people come into place, which will be, as you've seen, the 2nd of November, we'll start the HR recruitment process in a sense. We need to have the education ready. So what I'm describing to you today is where we're at the moment, with an anticipation that launches kind of early 2016. Roller. Okay. I'm going to test my agility here, isn't it? Okay. So I'm going to go through the background, some principles and assumptions, and describe what we're calling as a general pharmacist practice training program, which is an absolute mouthful. Appreciate we need to give it a title that stood out, and then describe to you how we're planning delivery and where we're going and how I can engage with you. And I'm going to stay around for the whole day, so clearly you'll probably have lots of thoughts when you say we could help with that. So HE has asked us to develop this pathway, and that's based on, to date, a range of consultations with stakeholders. But we've made quite a lot of principles and assumptions, because to keep it here is, and the key bit is, there's a lot of people who are doing much of these roles. But one of the key bits we've thought about is, how did those people get there? I used to be a head of medicines management at Primary Care Trust before I joined CPPA 10 years ago, and I would like to think that we kind of trained and supported and cajoled. But we also know there's an awful lot of resilience, serendipity, fortunate. This isn't going to happen for these people. These people need to get on a program which takes them through. And I think a really important bit here, and come back to what Sue Amber said a couple of weeks ago at an event run down at this isn't about training baby doctors. This is about training grown-up pharmacists. And so understanding where they are and where they're going is quite different in terms. So we have made quite a lot of principles and assumptions, and I'll share those first. So this is the role assumption, and this is a bit which I think I've spent quite a lot of time trying to. And this is where I think it is different to what lots of people are doing in practices now. Not everybody, but lots of people. We're assuming these people have clinical responsibilities, not medicines management purely responsibilities. We're assuming they're offering patient-facing roles. And even many people we recruited last week described, and I asked lots of people in some interviews, how much of your week across would you be working in front of patients? And they would say, I kind of do a couple of clinics, maybe 2 or 3, 5 people in a week. This is completely reversing that. This will be the majority of time I'm imagining these people would be patient-facing and will be trained to that level. The primary focus is on making decisions and expecting them to be prescribers. And we'll explain how we think we can fit that around there as well. As Rachel said, it's about improving access, it's about better use of medicines, it's about management of common ailments, it's about long-term condition management. You all know that as much as I do, but they're the kind of focus. And we need to make it flexible enough to understand who's coming through the door. Because actually, I imagine there'll be people who are going to apply in this room who've got 10, 15 years experience and think, this is actually the role I want to do now. When there could be other people who come straight out of hospital who've lived a quite cosseted life of 3 years being told what to do, and this is a very different world. Equally, it might be a community pharmacist who's had 15 or 20 years of independent practice, but moves into different. So we need to create a process that allows that to happen. In terms of developing the learning, we've thought around that being kind of 4 or 5 different principles there. So there's assessment at the start to baseline people and to develop a personal development plan. There's a combination of work-based learning plus contact learning, so study days and events, plus also self-study and local group work. And very much the bit we built really is the local support. So actually local support around having education supervisors who will offer kind of mentoring and support and coaching type skills, but also linking into people who are clinically active and also what we imagine will be their GP manager or their line manager within the practice. So where we've got to today, it's time for me to stand here and say this is what we've done. So we've been through a range of processes to get to here. HEE commissioned a survey, which some of you will have contributed to get a scope of what people were doing. We kind of thought we knew, but we went out and we had about 40 or 50 people reply to that. And Gail Fleming down in Kent, Surrey and Sussex led that for us. We've also done lots of conversations around with NHS England, the RPS, PCPA, you name every acronym, to kind of find and understand where the pilot's going. And then we had a focus group, which I know Graham came to a couple of weeks ago, and maybe some of the others did, I can't recognise anybody else, and about 30 people or so, generally jobbing practice pharmacists or people there, including Ravi Sharma, where we scoped out a kind of, what would it look like, what are the types of things we want people to do, what is it? And we went for the most basic principle of saying, if we were to train general practice pharmacists, what do we need to write down? Because actually we didn't really have that written down. We've got a range of frameworks, but not actually that. And I use the word curriculum loosely, I use the word syllabus loosely, but actually what would it be that we want to try? And that's really kind of brought together what we're now planning a pathway with a delivery plan. So that pathway is broken down into these 9 themes. And some of you may be on the first bit, which we launched early on in the process, which was in train, was a kind of fundamentals of general practice, which was an E-programme, so an E-course, a 13-week E-programme, and some people have been doing before summer. It's a couple of weeks off now and starts again. There's absolute fundamentals, and we aim that at not saying we're training these people, but actually, if you've worked in hospital, if you've worked in community pharmacy, you've not really got a feel what would be to live in fundamental. The rest of the words on here will look very familiar to you. There's no surprises. But below this, we've got now a series of competencies, knowledge, skills, behaviours and attitudes related to each of these areas, with a major focus on prescribing, defined by the General Pharmaceutical Council, obviously, but clinical assessment, examination and monitoring, communication, long-term condition management, and common elements. These bits down here are really important. We're kind of thinking the pharmacists will probably be able to do these bits, but in these niche roles, these are the things we need to be for. So what will our delivery plan look like? So this is the documentation. This is the kind of graphic we've been kind of describing to people the way it will roll. So these trainees, let's imagine a perfect world, and they all start on the 1st of January. I'm too bald and too old to realise that ain't going to happen, and realise that actually these people are going to spread over a period of time to us. And we may get people earlier than December, and they may get people kind of on 3 months' notice coming to us in March and April. So we'll have a development plan for that. What we'll have is we've kind of got an introduction part, those new to general practice and those who work already in general practice. The fundamentals course will be essential, that first bit. Then there's an assessment, and I'll explain to you what that will be and the details of that. Followed by what I've described on here as boot camp, but people are not so keen on those words, but that's the word we use. What we decided when we sat there and thought about it was actually we need to bring collegiality together. And I think there's a few people who, not many of you are older than me, but some of you remember something called the Morpeth course. Anybody shake their head and remember a Morpeth course? 1 or 2 people. So that was where, kind of in the 90s, 80s/90s, was kind of a generation of developing leaders in hospital pharmacy. It was innovative because actually it hadn't done that process before. Educationally, it was just about bringing people together and training them in leadership, management skills of what's important to the NHS. So we're going to try and recreate that feeling. So we're going to group these people, these 250 people, in groups from about 25 to 30 into cohorts. No matter where they come from the country, they will join a cohort and go through. So that'll be 10 cohorts approximately going through. So it'll be 10 of those induction blocks. And I'll describe to you what those induction blocks are in a moment. Then there'll be post-assessment. If they're not a non-medical prescriber, we'll be fast-tracking them into making sure they apply to locally whoever their non-medical prescribing programme is. So that whoever their local HEI is, we will not be doing that. That's not a role for CPPA. So that will dominate. But if they're a prescriber, then they'll go into the mix. And it'll be a mixture of study days, local support, and educational support following a PDP over an 18-month period. 2 further assessment blocks, there's only one on this graphic, but 2 further assessment blocks, which are described down here, and I'll explain to you where those go. And our ultimate place for these people is RPS faculty application. They may be in that train already, stage 2. We won't be signing these people off. That will be the process we do, and we'll work the way through that. That's an expectation. It's not a mandated part of the programme, but an expectation. I keep getting the FAQs usually say, we're not paying RPS fees and RPS assessment fees. That's up to the individual. So let me break that down into little parts of it. So the first part is assessment stage 1. Again, we've got a bit of work to do with this, and PCPA and RPS faculty team are kind of working with this, so we're kind of. This is as well as kind of, you'll see down here some type of clinical pharmacy medicines assessment to understand where people are. Because people are saying, well, they'll all have diplomas, they'll all have clinical pharmacy diplomas. That's not necessarily true. But so we can unpack someone's clinical knowledge. But more importantly, we think we need them to understand themselves. So we'll do Myers-Briggs, probably some type of leadership using Leadership Academy assessments as well. And then probably some core parts of things we think people need to have a baseline around. That will be done prior to boot camp and then unpacked at boot camp. Boot camp or induction block is looking like this at the moment. We've tested it with a few people. We're in a pilot, so this is not the special 250 people. We're just going to run a pilot to see if it works in November. So if you'd like to come along, there's a free three or so days education opportunity in November, and we'll be launching that in terms of bookings in about the next week on the CPA website. But if you want to email me, I'll give you my email. This is what we're kind of looking at to try and level people, to create the collegiality. This isn't to train them for the next 3 years. This is about bringing them together. You'll see here there's a block around kind of understanding where their role is, Myers-Briggs, PPP. Building in leadership, starting those early medical examination techniques, so blood pressure, pulse, some of those basic things that we think people may never have done before or might be quite skilled at. So that's quite a short session. We expect a 2-day residential later on. Therapeutics, medication review, polypharmacy, we're working with Keele and the team linked between Keele and the Medicines Prescribing Centre at NICE. They will deliver that for us on that day. Long conversation with Jonathan Underhill. And as there'll be a lot of IT, webinar-based stuff, teleconferences, we expect we need to do that because some people will have never engaged in that type of activity before, so we need to understand. Final day, consultation skills, communication skills, and bringing them. People will look at this and get their feel of what the role will be, as well as actually understanding where the development will take them. This is the bit we've never had before. This is the bit which is really exciting. We've been asked and will develop an infrastructure around educational support for pharmacists outside hospitals that we've never seen before. This isn't reliant on serendipity, having a great meet, bumping into great stretch and then being taken on a great journey. This is about actually saying to people outside hospitals, you will be supported and taken forward. So CPP will recruit a series of education supervisors, and we will see some of our tutors who've got the relevant skills, but equally we've gone out and you may have seen some adverts. The challenge for me there is, I don't know where these people are, so I can't actually point them all yet because I don't know. So we're trying to piece that together. And so we will have more posts. We're looking at a ratio of about 1 to 25 trainees. So 1 education supervisor, half a week's work to 25 trainees, roughly. We've tried to do some mapping on that. They will help them track to their pathway, they will deliver local learning, they will work with them in their learning sets, they will keep them on track, they will be their first port of call. They will also meet them at boot camps, they'll run study days and be part of that. But also, locally to this, because this is kind of the education bit, we also employ clinical supervisors. Again, if you think about it, the way this happens is that if we're going to work in practices that have got the greatest need, there will also probably be the practices under the most pressure, so actually we need to think about the intervals. So the clinical supervisors will be commissioned roles as in a day a week, day a month, to 2 days a month, will be people like you, the stars out there who we can link in. We'll be wanting you to run best practice sessions with them, sharing evidence, working locally. We'll look to form those relationships once we know where the trainees are. And finally, we obviously need to respect that there's a line manager in the process as well. We'd expect to think that would be a GP, and we would hope that would be the situation, but there'll be a part of the GP and a line manager. And these will be involved in kind of feedback and those processes as there. So that kind of gives me kind of this triangle of support around training. It needs to be flexible in terms of that individual. It needs to be stretching. It needs not to be overbearing, as Rachel said. These will be working, but kind of that's the process. We expect probably once a month there'll be local study groups these people will attend. They may be face-to-face, but they may be webinar. Again, geography. You know, if you're in the southwest, face-to-face spread across a large geography may not be possible, but there will be, as well as study days and the boot camp at the start, there will be those study days for people to come. Also, what we think here is there may be other people, not part of the pilot, would want to join these bits as well, so these local action sets. That'd be great. If we've got a resource, we've got some people to come together, and there's a free room in a practice where people, well, why not invite a couple more people who are budding to get on the next wave? Because of course there's going to be a next wave, isn't there? Of course. I'm comfortable with it. This is not just a pilot. So actually we're there. And we imagine we'll develop a range of resources locally, the groups will do that, so we want to train these people in developing resources, but equally use some resources that we've already got as well. And then the study days is the bit which is exercising me in terms of thinking about how we develop this, and we haven't really got a firm plan yet, but we're expecting there'll be a series of events for these individuals to come along to. Some will be mandatory and some of them will be flexible. They will all be fully funded. Many of them will be with partners, such as PCPA, such as RPS, such as local HEIs, such as UK CPA. But we're trying to piece this together, and again, this is hard. Some of them will be groups this size, some of them might be 150 people coming together as more a kind of conference experience. Some of them might be smaller. Clinical assessment skills over 2 days, we're piloting that in the Northwest. So doing a respiratory examination, doing a neuro examination, doing ears, eyes and throats. Clearly you can't really do that with 200 people. They'll be down in groups of 20. There'll be a second residential block a year later as well to keep those people together. But these are the things which have been put on the list. You can add and add and add and add. Clearly we'll have some self-directed learning as well in that process. And then the assessment stages, we're working our way through, but we'd expect mainly to use what now is embedded in terms of the faculty. So the resources which are pretty common in hospital pharmacy, so 360, mini CACs, case-based reviews, consultation skills, observations, those type of things we're building. Capacity around trainers and that and assessors is a challenge for us, but we'll get there on that as well. You can see that it kind of evolves as it goes through. Please don't take this as gospel. Certainly don't read that word OSCE, that certainly won't be there. But we're trying to work our way through, we've got a bit to unpack. These would be, if you imagine a trainee started in January, the next assessment stage would be maybe June, then maybe November, then maybe February 2017, something like that. So next steps, still need to lay a few more tracks on my train. So we've got a pathway document, which is kind of the curriculum syllabus. I'm not calling it those words, because actually we're not doing a formal assessment, which you would do through a university, so we're not calling it that. We're calling it a pathway document. That needs to go through the partners group and then out to a wider range of people, but there's already been about 50 or 60 people look at it, and that'll get published on the CPP website. We've got a bit more piecing together of the content, and we've got a plan around the delivery of boot camps and events. At the moment, we're thinking we will run the boot camps consecutively, virtually every other week, starting around the end of January. But that's me hoping everybody in place by that stage, and that kind of won't be like that. So we'll hold a couple back from that. Clearly, we can get people together using their education system. We're creating a reference group for the whole programme. At the moment, it's been lots of people, so we need to move from the crowdsourcing to the managed group, so there'll be a reference group meeting with a range of stakeholders and the experts from the field. We're going to pilot the boot camp, so if you'd like to come along and experience that, with a slightly different tone to it, but you're welcome to come along, and that's in November. We've started to recruit, so we've got a two-tier system of a lead, kind of in Manuel, many of you know, a range of deputy leads who will focus on certain areas, and education supervisors will be pointing to some of those, but not all. If you think you're going to be absolutely putting in a bid, and you think you might have people who could fulfill that role, then you're welcome, because we're going to go in for some targeted appointments. And we would look towards the comments around those people as well, because it's becoming very difficult, because I don't have the crystal ball on where they are. But I'm hoping NHS England will tell me early, in fact they've got to, so we can get those people in place to support. This is very exciting. I've never seen infrastructure outside a hospital to train people like this. I'm determined it won't fail. But also what we're doing is to create a model where it's only 250 people now, but I would imagine there should be 2,500 people in 5 years' time, because no pharmacist should leave university and just leave to let them do their own thing outside. We wouldn't do that in a hospital, generally. So why do we do that elsewhere? So while we're creating these models, all these models would fit perfectly if you went to have a career in community pharmacy, a career in general practice pharmacy, prison pharmacy, wherever you go. And so the model we're creating is that GP deanery type model. So, thank you very much.